Hey everyone, Adam and Jenny here. As you probably know, I've been doing a lot of videos that I hope are helpful to people during the pandemic. And I was going to sit down with a few of the moms, well, sit down through an online video with a few of the moms in our church and just talk to them about what it's like to raise multiple kids at home during this pandemic and how e-schooling is going, any tips and advice that they would have for other families at this time. And then I thought, why on earth would I be doing that interview? That would be so much better for Jenny to do it. She's going to ask better questions, have a better conversation with them. And so I asked Jenny if she would do the interview, and she graciously agreed. So, Jenny, what did you talk about with them?
We had such a great time. We had an opportunity to talk about different tips and tools that we've been using in our homes with our kids to help this time be as productive and as family friendly as possible. We talked about some of the challenges that we're having as well and some of the ways that we're seeking to combat those with intentionality and purpose. It's funny, between the five ladies that were on this call together, there are 19 kids.
That's too many kids.
It's a lot of kids, ages 21 down to 6 months. So I think you'll find that there's a lot of variety in perspectives and life experiences. And if you're a mom in this stage, I hope that you'll be able to take away some nuggets of encouragement and of truth to apply to your day.
So here's Jenny's conversation with a bunch of moms.
Hey, ladies, thank you so much for joining us here today. Let's go ahead and jump into some introductions and get started. I'll start off. My name is Jenny. I am married to Adam, and we have three kids, ages 6, 4, and 6 months old. And we are very much in the thick of balancing what it looks like to e-school on the young side and to work from home for the both of us and to have a baby. And so that's been just a very interesting dynamic right now. A fun one, but an interesting one.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Trong, and I'm married to Martin, and we have four kiddos. They are all about to have birthdays, so they are about 8, 6, 4, and 2, and we are balancing Martin mostly working from home these days. He does go into the office still a little bit, but it's definitely different from before because he used to travel a lot. And he's not traveling now. So working from home, and then I do not work, but I am doing school with the two older ones. And we were a homeschool family prior to everyone being a homeschool family these days. So it has changed somewhat in limiting, what we can do, but we're kind of continuing on with what we had going already and missing a lot of things like everybody is.
And I'm Jenny. I'm married to Sean, and we have 5 kids from 21 years old down to 11. Well, 21, 18, 15, 13, 11. And like Elizabeth, Sean is working from home mostly now. And then my college student has been home some, so added back to the mix. And then my high schoolers are doing some e-learning, and then my younger ones are homeschooled. So we're kind of, like Elizabeth said, continuing with that, although again, like our co-ops don't meet and not getting out like we did before, but just continuing mostly with that schooling.
My name's Kelly, and I am married to Ben, who typically travels about 75% of the time, and has now been home 100% of the time. So it's been a good and interesting transition for us. It's actually the first year in our entire 16 years of marriage that he's been home this much. And then we have 4 kids also, 10, 8, 6, and 4. So I have been thrown into the e-learning with Rockwood School District with the older 3, which has been interesting because it's a lot of balancing a lot of different meetings and a lot of different classes and different specials, and so it's been interesting. And I've gone from having one child at home to having all 4 of them, which I love, but it definitely is different dynamics.
My name is Missy. I'm married to Brent, and he is a high school teacher, so I'm getting to kind of see the e-learning from the teacher perspective, which has been really interesting. So we are working with him being at home. I have 3 homeschooled kids as well, 3rd grade, 1st grade, and a preschooler who kind of runs the roost. So that's kind of what we're balancing right now.
Life looks so different depending on what stage of life you're in. So I see some people posting online about all these different, activities that they're doing, or all these different house projects or organizing projects. And that's awesome. But I'm sitting here with the baskets of laundry and the dishes piling up and the kids and the baby. And it's beautiful and it's messy and it's chaotic, but it's definitely, it definitely looks different. And I think for all of us that are in this phase, it's a busy time. It's a crazy time. It can be draining. It can be really loud and noisy. And so there's the beauty of being able to be at home with our kids while juggling responsibilities. And we are so thankful for that. And we're thankful for health, and we're thankful for the ability to be home with them. At the same time, it can kind of get crazy at times and a little chaotic. So that kind of leads me into the first question, which is, what types of rhythms or routines have you found to be helpful for your families?
I was a teacher when I used to be out of the home. Now I stay at home with the kids. Having been in that situation and scenario, I've had to learn a lot of flexibility. And so, but I also really want to have a regular rhythm and routine. I kind of try to follow that same thing with my kids at home. Keep a schedule that's very loose, and that way I can not be too hard on myself if we don't get to the things that we need to get to and push things off to the next day or whatever we need to do. It gets tricky, especially with all the Zoom meetings that my kids have. I'm juggling probably 2 or 3 at least a day or in the mornings. And so I just have to know that I need to be fluid and move with it and just let things happen the way they're going to happen. But we do try to block off a morning from probably about 9 to noon where we're just kind of concentrating on school and not letting, I mean, the little kids will want to run off and play for a while, and they do. They'll go off and have a break for like 15 to 30 minutes or whatever and then come back. The afternoon usually for us is just kind of go out and have fun. I mean, it's been so nice to have the nice weather because then I can just push them out the door and they can play all afternoon. So that's kind of what it's looked like for us. And I will say my kindergartner and my second grader have quite often had to come back in the afternoon and finish some things they didn't do in the morning, but that's okay because like I said, you kind of need to be flexible and fluid.
So I realized pretty early on, staying home with the kids full time, that my mental health is kind of a barometer for everybody else's mental health. So I learned very quickly that I had to take care of myself before I tried to pour out to them. So I've realized, especially in this quarantine time, that how I start my day and how I end my day is the most important. So in the morning, the most important thing for me is just to figure out what energizes me, what gets me moving, what gets my body right, gets my mind right, my spirit right. So that's going to be different for everybody, but just thinking about those things. And it doesn't need to be something you think you should do in the morning. Like, well, I read that I need to read my Bible in the morning or have my quiet time in the morning or work out in the morning, whatever it is. It needs to be what energizes you because that's going to get your day started well. So for me personally, I do like to work out in the morning. So I get my kids situated with breakfast. And the better breakfast I make them, the longer they will leave me alone. So if I make a beautiful Cracker Barrel breakfast, then I can get a good 45-minute workout in while they're still sitting at the table enjoying it. So I try to squeeze that in the morning just to start my day off right. And then after that, I try to follow the same general flow throughout the day, but I love that word fluid that Kelly mentioned, how the schedule needs to be fluid because it's always changing. If the weather is beautiful, then we're going outside and doing some nature studies. And if it's raining and gross, then man, we could get through a lot of math. There's no one size fits all when it comes to a schedule. It's all about what your family prioritizes and what you want to get done throughout the day. And then how I end my day, the biggest thing that has helped me is learning that nothing stresses me out more in the morning than a mess everywhere. So I try to really quickly just tidy up the areas that we use the most. I'll turn on my Clean the House Spotify playlist and just get to work. And I can usually get it done pretty quickly, but it's just a great way for me to kind of prepare for the next day so that I start the next day off on the right foot.
So one of the unique dynamics that all of us have is we have kids across an age span, right? And so we're juggling the needs of multiple kids. And so I'm wondering for you guys, how do you find ways to juggle the needs of the bigger kids with the younger kids, because those needs are really different and they can change even on a given day, depending on who's feeling well or who's off a little bit. So what are some tips or some encouragement you can give mamas who are watching about managing those needs?
So that is always a challenge, let's be honest. And I think that's a question. I feel like when people find out that I homeschool, that's one of the most common questions that I get is, how do you manage, in our family, we call them the bigs and the littles. The bigs are the 8 and the 6-year-old. The littles are the 4 and the 2-year-old who aren't doing much formal schoolwork yet. So whether it's schoolwork or something else going on during the day, if I'm focusing my attention one-on-one on one of the older kids, I have the other big kid kind of manage or be in charge of the younger two, the littles. And that seems to work really well for us. I've talked to them about it consistently. I remind them of it in the morning. If I kind of have the same flow, like Missy and Kelly talked about, where pretty much about 8:30 to 12 these days is kind of dedicated to more formal schoolwork. So for part of that, we're all kind of reading together, and the little kids are playing with designated toys that they really only get to do, have access to when the big kids are doing schoolwork. So they're kind of special, and the sheen hasn't quite worn off as much. So that's quiet things like kinetic sand, Play-Doh, brain flakes, and lift the flap books. For some reason, my 2-year-old loves, and so I only let her look at them during that time. And so anyway, just special things. So then move into the time when I am working one-on-one with one of the bigs, then the other big is in charge of the littles. And it's also been a really neat time just to see their creativity come out and realize, oh, like I'm very valuable to mom at this point. She really needs me to help the littles because she's doing this. So they kind of invent games, or I tell them in the morning, think about what you want to do with the little kids when it's your time with them. And so it's kind of neat to see them just grow into that. And we just really try to communicate that that's an important way for them to help our family. Now, of course, this time doesn't go perfectly and seamlessly. I have to help sometimes. There's crying and there are tantrums, but that's one of my biggest strategies. So especially during schoolwork, but that could be really at any time of day. And then really, my kids are so little still that I think 5 minutes alone with them goes a long way. And I try to get that up front in the day with the littles so that they do feel like they've had my focused attention before we settle into schoolwork. Things just go a lot smoother that way. And what I mean by 5 minutes of focused attention is I'm alone with one of them in their room, helping them get dressed, talking to them, and maybe we read a book really quickly. This is not like going out on a date every day together or something like that. So I just feel like that sets a good scene. And my other big priority in our house and our flow that helps me address different kids' needs more effectively is to really protect nap time / quiet time. So, the littles still nap, the bigs do not, but they all have to go into a separate room during that time and just kind of chill, play with toys that I don't allow in the other areas of the house. The bigs listen to audiobooks during that time, which is, I feel really good about because then they're being read too, but it's not me doing the reading. And that way my eldest, who's much more of an introvert, has her alone time to kind of regroup. And my second, who's very much an extrovert, learns that she can play on her own effectively. And so that's kind of whether they realize that they need this time or not is giving them something they need. And then that's the time that I take a breath for myself too and work on something or read something that I want to read or kind of regroup emotionally for the rest of the day. So I am no expert, but those are some of the things I do to try to balance the age range.
That's really good stuff. And Elizabeth, I'm going to spring a secondary question on you because I think this would be helpful to hear from for some people. What happens when the kids don't want to go do those things, right? If they don't want to go into quiet time, how do you encourage that in a positive way? And help them see the benefit of it, even if maybe they don't feel like it on that given day.
Yeah, good question. Because it doesn't work perfectly all the time. Again, I talk to them about it. It's just kind of woven into our family routine. So we talk about it. I try to give them something they can look forward to sometimes during quiet time. If the girls really want to write somebody a card or really want to spend more time with a certain Lego set or drawing on something, and I want to make sure that they're looking forward to quiet time, I say, well, let's set that aside and have you work on it for quiet time. My 4-year-old is getting to the point where sometimes he naps and sometimes he doesn't, and he's been a little bit more resistant about it lately. So I've just shifted. So I always read him a book before. So instead of saying, okay, it's time for your nap time, now I say, it's time for me to go with you to your room to read a book. And he's all about that. So I don't know. I try to just give it the most positive spin possible. And focus on that and just remind them this doesn't last forever. It's just a short time. We'll all come back together afterwards. I try to give them something to look forward to on the other end of quiet time, which is snack time. So that this didn't happen overnight. This was slowly built up. So I would say if you're starting out and trying to implement this, start with just 15 minutes or 20 minutes and slowly build on there, because you can't expect a kid to just suddenly go from 0 to 60 minutes of alone, happy, quiet time. We wouldn't do that to an adult who was untrained. So I would just say start gradually and say, you can do anything for 15 minutes. It won't kill you, and we're going to try this. And I think it's going to be, it's just going to make our time together even better.
Obviously, we're about to come out of some of the quarantine restrictions that we're on, but still, I don't think it's going to look the same as summers have in the past for most of us. So I think having that as a tool, even on some days, to be able to build into your schedule can be really helpful for your kids and to help maintain everyone's sanity and everyone's kind of peace of mind throughout the day. And for it to be a special time, like you said, where they can be on their own and do some special things that they might not get to do at other times. So that kind of leads me into another question about alone time and finding alone time and personal time when your entire family is in your house all day long. Yeah. How do we do that? How do we manage our stress? Obviously, there is that element of some alone time, but what does that look like?
So I think that it's pretty obvious after everybody has kind of experienced your family being around 24/7, you learn pretty quickly that alone time isn't just going to happen naturally. You have to really build it into your day and make it happen if it's something that you need, which I think we all do. So I'm with Elizabeth. I love what she shared about her kids resting. I am the same. I make everybody rest. And we talk about how important it is. I even love to bring Jesus into it and say, you know what? Jesus had a lot of time with people, but sometimes he just needed to go off and be by himself. And, it's not a bad thing to need some alone time. And I've always built it around the youngest kid just because that kind of was the easiest. If you have a younger one who still, needs a little bit more of a rest or a nap, then you just make the older ones do it at that time as well. The older kids can play or read, or they could work on schoolwork in their rooms, whatever they want to do. And my kids enjoy that time. And it's not a punishment to them. It's a time where they get to do whatever they want to do. They don't have to share anything. They don't have any siblings bothering them. They get to, I love seeing their imaginations in that time, how they grow, because they have to keep themselves occupied for an hour or two at a time. I think it's a great time for their brain to develop some ideas, to be creative, and to make up those games. I do agree that kids get resistant to it at a certain point. There's usually like this age between 2 and 5 where they think a lot of other awesome things are happening when they're gone. And you have to be really honest with them and say, nothing is happening. I am resting, you are resting, all your siblings are resting, and just lay it out there and say, we're all having our alone time right now. I think that's really important. But I think the most important part of like having a schedule like that, where you kind of do protect that time, is that you have to be ready for your alone time and make sure you know how you want to spend it. So it's precious and it's fleeting and it goes by really quickly. And so you have to know what you need that day. So maybe during that day, you really need to read your Bible. You really want to work out. You really want to make yourself a nice lunch. Maybe you want to take a nap. Maybe you have a really good book you want to read. Whatever it is that you feel like your body's like, this is what I need right now. You need to know that ahead of time so that you are ready to do it when the moment strikes. So that you know and you have a plan so that it doesn't catch you off guard. It's just like social media. You can be scrolling through social media and 35 minutes will pass and you'll just think, what happened? Where did the time go? That happens so easily when you have alone time. You squander it if you don't know what you want to do with it.
Jenny, I want to hop in real quick too. Just my kids being at school all day, because they're usually at school. They usually leave my house at 8:30 and get home at 4:30. So they're not typically home for a rest time. So rest time has actually gone off of our calendar, which I used to be just like Missy and Elizabeth. We always had a rest time. It was a non-negotiable. Everybody was quiet. It didn't matter, what age you were. But then with them being at school and being used to just, being up all day, I kind of got out of that habit, which is fine. But just there's other ways to find time. For my kids, they're old enough now that they'll just go off and play for a while and I can be alone. But if they're not, for me, the most important thing for me is to have my workout. Like Missy said, like I need to work out every day. And so it works for me. I can get up early in the morning and I'm fine. So I get up between 5 and 5:30 every morning and work out. And I have usually about 2 hours in the morning by myself. And now Ben is home, so he's with me too. But we work out, we do a Bible, we pray together, we both do our own quiet times, and then I hop in the shower, and by the time I'm out of the shower, they're starting to wake up. So there's other ways. I just wanted to throw that out there because there are other ways to work it in if your kids aren't resting, because it is hard once they, I have a 4th grader. He's been out of resting for 5 years now. He's not going to let me put him back into it. You know what I mean? I could, but I don't really choose to, I guess. So.
Yeah, no, that's really good insight. And we've seen that transition happen for us as well a little bit, just with my oldest going to school this last year, where he's kind of gotten out of that routine because he's used to having to be going and has a lot of energy. So a lot of times we use that afternoon time when the baby is napping for sometimes either some focused activities with the older ones that are kind of quieter still. So kind of like an idea of just intentional quiet, or if they're really wound up, they can go ride bikes in the cul-de-sac and, and burn off some energy that way. That gives me usually a little bit of time to be quiet, be intentional. And then we usually end up that time once the baby wakes up with some outdoor running and activity together too. So I think a good synthesis of what everyone is saying is find something that works for you. Find a way to get your kids to have some sort of individual time so that there is some sort of order and intentionality to your day, so that you have a little space and you have a little bit of time to get some of your stuff done in whatever way that works for you. And that's really helpful. And one of the biggest things I'm hearing too is intentionality, right? None of this stuff happens if we don't seek out and do a little bit of pre-planning. And sometimes that's hard to even take that one step and just start a little bit. But when we do that, then we're able to just do the very next right thing and be intentional in that rest time, be intentional with getting up a little earlier, or maybe it's after the kids go to bed. And that intentionality can go a really long way and make the most of the time. Kind of along those lines with personal expectations, right? So, Kelly, you just mentioned you work out in the morning, and Missy, you mentioned the afternoon, and I could see someone listening to this and going, oh my goodness, I can't do that. That doesn't work for me. That doesn't fly. So what does it look like to have healthy personal expectations, or even healthy school expectations for ourselves, for our kids? Maybe even if we do have certain structures set up and then we're having an off day, what does that look like, and how can we have a healthy perspective on that?
I would say, Jenny, not to worry about things that get missed. Like, don't worry about getting every little thing done, especially if you're working from home and, school sent all this work for you. We moved to England a number of years ago, and we're there for 2 years. So in 2 years, we had 2 moves, We had a new baby. We had tons of visitors who would come stay with us, which was so great. But when somebody comes to visit you from another country, you can't really just say, oh, we've got to go do our schoolwork now. So we'd, hang out with them. And so there were really 2 full years where our school wasn't the greatest. There was good time in between there, of course. But I just remember really worrying at that time, like, oh no, what is this doing to my kids' education? And my oldest was in 4th and 5th grade. And so it was, she was old enough, I thought mattered. And the truth is, in the end, they were fine. They went on the next year just fine with their education. And, it wasn't an issue. So especially school kids, they repeat issues, or homeschoolers, you do the same thing multiple times. So don't worry if they miss some things this year. Kids can catch up really easily. It's not a big deal if you miss some things here and there. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to get every little thing done. And for the older kids who maybe they're doing classes where they won't necessarily make it up later, one thing that comforts me in my schooling all the time is that God has his purposes for our kids, and whatever his purposes are, he will equip them. We have to be diligent to do a really good job and try our best. But also, if he has a plan for them, he's going to make sure they have what they need. They're going to have the skills and the knowledge they need. So just don't worry is my main thing. Don't worry.
I think along those same lines too is just the grace that you need to give yourself. I had a friend at the beginning of this say to me that this is not really your typical homeschool experience. You're in crisis learning, you're in crisis teaching. And that was good for me to hear, because even though I have a background in it, I was still feeling pretty stressed, So, but then as things have gone on too, I've realized the teachers are stressed, the other people are stressed. I mean, everybody is in the same boat. So I think we just need to make sure that we're giving ourselves grace and realize that we're all kind of in this together.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll speak to kind of the personal expectations because we've mentioned working out a lot, and I think it's important just to realize what you need in your day and make that a priority. The things that energize you, the things that bring you peace or balance in your day. I think if you are thinking about those things and building those into your day, I think that's the expectation you want to set. I don't think everybody needs to wake up, work out, do their Bible study, have a quiet time, pray with their spouse, educate their kids from 8 to 12, take a nap, then go outside and everybody go on a family hike. And I think that if you're in tune with what you need and making that a priority, I think that should be the expectation. So if you know you're a person who needs a workout to relieve stress, then you're going to want to make that a part of your day. And I think now, especially with having a little bit more free time, it's a time where we could build good habits, maybe some habits that we've lost along the way that we want to build back into our schedule. I know I had a pretty rough summer health-wise, and working out and eating right kind of fell by the wayside. And I saw that in how my family lived out their life. And so being able to reset and say, these were things that were important to me, and now I want to get those things back. And so something I've learned in this season of quarantine is just that self-control is one of the fruit of the Spirit attributes. And I think so often we don't think about it as a self-control issue. But if I know that my body needs exercise every day and needs to eat right, and I choose not to do that, that is me not having self-control. So it's something that I pray for, just asking the Lord to give me that self-control to do the things that I know my body needs so that I can be healthy, so that I can help my family to be healthy.
That is so good. Thank you so much for sharing that. And like you said, it really is so individual for different people. There's the big picture stuff that we know is healthy, but what that looks like for you is different, and that's okay. So what does it look like to make the most of this opportunity with our children?
I would encourage those of you that the schooling at home is something new, that you might want to take this opportunity to add some Bible to your schooling. That's not something that teachers are sending home with your kids, but Deuteronomy 6 says we should love the Lord with all our heart, soul, and strength, and that we should teach our kids his commandments. And so for me in schooling, I really wanted Bible and teaching about God to be a priority. And so I have always done it first thing in the day. And that has looked very different over the years. With my little kids, it might be a little kids Devo book, or we might just do their little Sunday school homework and talk about what they did in Sunday school. Or I might do a topical study from time to time, just talk about things like how do we pray, or attributes of God, or getting along with siblings. And right now that might be a really good thing to focus on. And as they got older, it's different. Sometimes we'll do just like read a book of the Bible, a chapter a day or something like that. So we also then pray together, and I just find it's a great way to start the day. And so I just think this is kind of a new opportunity for some people, since you're doing their schooling, to add Bible to school.
This time for us has just been so precious too, because we can add so many things that we don't usually get to do together into our schedule. And so, I'm also the weirdo that cries at the end of every summer because my kids have to go back to school. So maybe you don't feel the same, but for me, it's just been really precious to have them around. And we've been pulling out toys from the garage that have not been played with for the 5 years we've lived here, or we went outside and played a whole kickball game with just our family. When you have a family of 6, you can do that. So it was 3 on 3. We've gone on long walks. We've gone on hikes into different parks that we've never been to before. So we've gotten to explore more together. We don't have all the things that are pulling us in every direction. So I think just taking advantage of the things, and think through your list. Like, what are the things that I wish I could do with my kids, but we just don't typically have time for? And I think everybody's in that boat, because everybody gets busy with sports and school, and whether you school at home or school at school or wherever you are, your schedule just gets busy. So come up with that list of the things that you don't normally get to do, and do them and have fun together.
What other resources do you guys have to share? Maybe there's a mama out there who's like, okay, so how do I teach Bible to my kids? I know Bible, but how does that translate? Or I have kind of tapped out my resources. We are in week 7 here, and maybe I even have a limited budget. So what does it look like to maybe have some of these resources, and what are ones that you guys would recommend to them?
I think I mentioned when I was talking about quiet time that we use audiobooks a ton, and we use them in many formats. So I ask for audio story CDs for gifts for the kids when Christmas and birthdays come around, and they don't need many new toys. And a favorite storytelling CD series is anything by Jim Weiss. So it's available on Amazon, but other places online too might have it cheaper. And there are some free videos of him online as well, but he is a master storyteller, and there's some that are very good for girls, very good for boys, very good for both. We also use Audible, and right now there's a lot of free kids content on Audible for audiobooks. And we also have, just from when they were younger, picture books that came with a CD that has a little chime where you turn the page. So again, it's like someone else is reading. It's like I'm reading to them, but I'm not reading to them. Someone else is reading to them. If you have access to Right Now Media through our church or another church, make use of that as much as you can. I've actually had the kids watch Superbook and Torchlighters episodes that kind of fit into what we were doing with school anyway. I love Torchlighters in general, but especially for this time. For those of you who don't know, Torchlighters, I think the subtitle is Heroes of the Faith. So it tells stories of real life Christian people from history, missionaries and other people who went through really tough situations and showed bravery and courage. And I just think right now is the perfect time for our kids to hear examples of people who have gone through tough times and how they responded, how God guided them through. So I love Torchlighters for that. And then Superbook is kind of a good supplementary Bible curriculum or Bible content show that my kids like. And then just in general, readaloudrevival.com is a great resource if you're just looking for new ideas for books for all ages, levels, interests, seasons. There are amazing free book lists on there. Obviously, we don't have our libraries open right now, but you could get the book list there and then use electronic books that you can access through our libraries through things like Hoopla, or, just set it aside when grandparents are asking for a birthday gift idea, or maybe you're allocating a little bit more budget to buy books right now since you can't go to the library. Those are some good resources for getting some fresh book ideas?
So we are an art family, and it's something that we're all passionate about. So something that we love to do pretty much every day is a free YouTube channel called Art for Kids Hub. And it's really fun. It's this dad who's an artist, and he does art of little characters alongside one of his kids. And he has a kid in high school, middle school, elementary school, and then he's got a toddler. So you get to see him do different art projects with each kid. And so there's different levels and different difficulties. But it's a lot of fun, and it teaches them a new skill, but it's also a great conversation starter, because he talks a lot about how, you know, your art's going to look different than mine, and you just need to practice, and it's okay if it looks different, because we're all learning. And so I think it's just something that I love to do with my kids, and whatever their interest is. You know, one of them might say, oh, I want to do a Minecraft character. And then I have one who wants to do a princess, and one who's really into animals. He literally has done hundreds of videos, and they're all free. And so you can just look up whatever your kid is interested in, and you can even sit alongside them and do a drawing with them. It's a lot of fun. We'll link the channel to this video post. And then the other thing that we really like is free coloring pages for reading through the Bible. So there's a website that you can look at, and you literally just go to the website and you type in what book of the Bible you're going to be reading, and then it gives you this coloring page that your kids can sit and work on, and it's really beautiful artwork. And so it kind of gives them something to do with their hands while you're reading the Bible together. And so those are just two free resources that we've used that they have really enjoyed.
As I was thinking about resources, a couple of things that came to mind. One was getepic.com. And if you have kids in school, I'm not sure if all the schools and districts are doing this, but our district is giving it to us for free. And it's a great resource. There's, I can't remember how many thousands of books on there for your kids to read, but you can also sign up and pay for an account as well. So it's just been great for us, because like Elizabeth said, the libraries are closed, and so it's really hard to find. You know, my kids get tired of the books that we have around the house, quite honestly. So this has been a great way for them to have a great, you know, a whole range of different books that they can read on their levels too. So it's a level, which is nice. And then as far as like, I was thinking like, what Bibles do we love to read from, and other things that we do? We try to do devotions with them as well. And we've just really been loving the Jesus Calling for Kids devotional and the Jesus Calling Bible. The Bible is great because it takes you through the Bible, but also at the end of each chapter kind of connects it to the Jesus Calling, which we really like.
We are really loving the Tales That Tell the Truth series right now. And if you're a friend with me, you've probably heard me talk about it. And I know Elizabeth knows about it because she's shared some with us, but they are just beautiful stories that are singled out, and the artwork is absolutely beautiful. And then they usually tie it into something that has to do with your present day life. And it's just really, really well done. So we'll include that in the notes as well from today. They have a variety of different stories, and I'll find my 6-year-old son just reading them on his own. And my daughter loves to follow along, and that's been really, really fun and a neat way to retell some of the stories. And then similarly, there's the Indescribable devotional by Louis Giglio, and it's based off of a series he did about 10, 15 years ago now, but it's all science-based. So a little bit of it is a little too above a 6-year-old's head. It's probably designed more for like 1st to 3rd graders, but you can kind of tailor the wording a little bit and revise it a little bit. And it's neat. And I think it's a really cool way to build a foundation for the ideas of God created the world. God created you. He made all these amazing things. Look, this is a picture of a supernova out in, the far off galaxies. And it just really gives a picture and paints a picture of how big and how amazing and how awesome our God is. And I love that, because I think it's neat to begin that at an early age, because if we can help our kids understand how big God is, yet how much he loves them, that sets a foundation for a lot in the future.
So one thing we like to use is called Shepherd software, mostly just for geography, but it's just a fun, if they want something to do on a screen that's educational, it just helps them learn geography, just learning the countries. I love having my kids know where things are in the world that we hear about on the news and things. So it's just an easy way to learn Shepherd software. So we'll give you that link as well.
What would you say to someone who's really wrestling with just not knowing what the next week or month is going to look like, uncertainty? You know, maybe their family has been really affected by the economy, or they've had job loss, or they've had someone who has been affected by the coronavirus. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty, a lot of lack of control, and not being able to really know what tomorrow will hold. What would you say to someone who is wrestling with that right now?
I think, as you guys have mentioned, intentionality has been a reoccurring word that's come up here. And I think that applies in dealing with the uncertainty and the lack of control, which seems sort of counterintuitive that we can be intentional, but it returns to, okay, recognizing I don't have direct control over what the government is going to decide or what regulations we're going to have for the summer. I don't have control probably over what activities are going to be canceled that are decided by, a group apart from me. I don't have control over what's happening around the world. I've had to kind of just have a running internal dialogue about that. Sometimes it's kind of just internal, and sometimes it's during times of prayer where I'm going back to God and saying, okay, Lord, I'm struggling with this. Like there's a lot of uncertainty. I don't have control over this, but talking with him and saying, but I do see what you've given me. And at this time, it's the role of mom and wife here at home, and the role of daughter and friend and community member, and many other roles too. But I see these things that you have left that are somewhat under control, and I can choose how I respond to what still is in front of me in a way that is honoring to you. So again, kind of returning to things that everybody's already mentioned, I have control over what I choose to read to my kids during the day, what I choose to let them see, what I choose to fill their minds and hearts up with. I can have control over what time I choose to go to bed, like at a healthy time versus a binge watching time that will not set me up well for my next day. I have control over prioritizing my physical activity. With that said, I do think it's still important and healthy to mourn the loss of what we have lost and will lose in the future, and recognize, it's okay to feel sad over those things, and denying that you're feeling sad is not going to help you cope. And I do have a tendency to just kind of want to deny, okay, well, I don't want to feel sad, so I'm just going to pretend like that's not happening. But just recognizing, okay, I really am sad that this has been canceled, that I'm missing this, that this is not going to look like what we expected. And it's okay to feel that way, and to turn to God and talk to him about it. And list, this goes for life in general, but make gratitude lists, make thankful lists, speak out loud when you're praying to him, things that you are thankful for, that he's still providing, and go back to attributes of his that are true and unchanging no matter what's going on around us. He is unchanging, and he is our solid rock during this time. And again, just going back to the idea of there's a lot outside of our control, but we get to choose how we respond to those things. When I think about this idea that has helped me a lot in life, even before coronavirus happened, I think of something from Lord of the Rings that is a short conversation between Frodo and Gandalf, for any Lord of the Rings fans out there, or even if you're not a fan, maybe this will make you one. Frodo says, when he's going through his really difficult journey and is close to the end and is just exhausted and discouraged and feeling like it's impossible, he says, I wish it need not have happened in my time, Frodo says. And Gandalf says, so do I. And so do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. And that is a comfort to me. I mean, it's a hard comfort because we're going through hard times, but, Jesus told us that in this world that we will have trouble, but that he has overcome the world. Another way that I have I think positively dealt with the stress of the lack of control is finding little ways to really push myself to have those healthy habits like that Kelly and Missy have mentioned. And one way I found to do it was I was actually in this 4-week challenge with a group that just was an online group, but you could do it with family or friends or whoever you want, where we were competing against each other for healthy habits. And I definitely don't want to make anyone feel like, oh, you have to add another thing to your plate. But these were just kind of pretty small things that I would want to do as part of my daily routine anyway. And the competition aspect and the accountability aspect just really helped me make them reality. So that was a healthy way of, I think, dealing with the stress that comes from this lack of control feeling. And it was fun.
Good. That's really good. Thanks so much for sharing, Elizabeth. And I love that Frodo and Gandalf quote. And that reminds me too of the 90-10 rule, right? So life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you deal with it. And it's hard sometimes because that puts a lot of ownership on us and a lot of responsibility. But I think that's under that God-given responsibility that each of us have that we're given today. And we decide how to deal with that. And I think that there's some too that the isolation or the loneliness or maybe just the feeling of overwhelm has really started to cause a lot of discouragement or cause a lot of sadness or almost even feelings of helplessness or hopelessness, to the point of just like, oh my goodness, I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. I mean, I know it's going to come, but I'm kind of dreading it. And so my encouragement there would just be to do the next right thing, to get up and know, okay, as soon as I open my eyes, maybe I'm going to say a quick prayer, and then I'm going to get out of bed and I'm going to wash my face and I'm going to walk down the stairs and I'm going to make breakfast. And you take those simple, small steps. And that is that momentum that gets you going physically in the morning so that you can be there for your kids and for your family as well. And Elizabeth, you mentioned this with the accountability piece. And I think sometimes for some of us who might be struggling right now or struggling at times, sometimes reaching out to a friend and saying like, hey, either can you check in with me, or hey, can we encourage each other to do this one thing, or hey, let's read through a book together, or hey, let's touch base on this one thing that we're trying to work on individually on our own, and we'll check in each day at night and text each other. I think that can be really encouraging too, because not only is it accountability, but it's reaching out to some of your support, and it's talking about something other than we're at home with the kids and it's a goal, and it's something that you can then look back on and say, hey, yeah, during quarantine we did this and this is good and healthy. So certainly not something that everyone has to do, but it's helpful, especially if you need a little bit of a boost at this point when your adrenaline has run out and we're kind of in that home stretch. So as we wrap up today, what would you like to share with ladies who are watching? Just maybe one thing. If you could say one thing to the ladies who are watching today, maybe encouragement or something that would be uplifting, what would that be?
Missy touched on this already, but don't feed yourself the message that your quarantine time has to look like somebody else's quarantine time, or as others have said too, what keeps you healthy and thriving is exactly the same schedule and exactly the same methods that works for somebody else.
I guess I would just encourage people that to have grace for yourself. God has grace for you every single day, and go back to him for grace. Like when you feel like you failed, go to him and remember that he gives you grace every single day. And along with that, just turn to him. Use this time as a time that when you are down or struggling, to turn to him. Like that can be a great result. I tell my students that all the time. Just turn to him, and you'll be blessed. And even though it's hard things coming out, there's no better blessing than coming out of this time closer to God.
Just as a quick little snippet into my past and my testimony, but I went through infertility for a couple of years, and I just have felt a lot of similarities to that in the waiting part of things. And I think when we live month to month the way that we're doing right now, or week to week or day to day or however, it feels so long and so hard, and you're waiting, and waiting is hard. And especially like we just talked about, not having the control over it, not knowing what's going to happen next. And I think that God's just really been speaking to me a lot right now about how this is the waiting part of it. And Isaiah 40:31 says, "But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint." So I've just been wanting to embrace this time and knowing that we are just in a time of waiting, and God is going to move, and He is moving. And when we look back on this, I mean, I look back on that part of my story now, and I'm like, it felt so short and such a small little snippet of time in my lifespan, and really a small snippet of time in the sense of eternity. And in the time, it felt so long. So I think that's where we're sitting right now. We're feeling like it's long and there's no control, but it's really, we're going to look back on this, and it's not going to feel as long and as hard as we think it is.
I think what I would say is that you can't do it all. I think there are so many things being offered for families at home right now: online dance classes, art classes, workouts, cooking videos, pretty much anything you can think of. They are making a virtual classroom for your kids and for you and your marriage and your spouse. I think on top of that, there's also laundry and schoolwork and cleaning and cooking and 100 other things that you have to do every day on a normal day. And so I think there aren't enough hours in the day to do all the things that you see your friends doing on social media. I think that you need to try and create a rhythm for your family, and looking at the things that you value the most and having that be what the things that you want to do with your family. I think it doesn't need to look like everybody else. You don't have to do all the activities. You can say no to things. Even if they are great things, you can still say no. This just doesn't fit what my vision is for my day today, for my family's week, for our month, for our quarantine experience. And just kind of circle the wagons a little bit around your family and do the things that you value the most.
Thank you guys so much for sharing. And I would say just, when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling stressed, when you're feeling frustrated, when you're feeling all those things in a short period of time, I would encourage you, take some deep breaths and just say a simple prayer to God. Just reach out to Him. Lord, I need you. Please help me is mine. That's my go-to in a moment where I feel like either I'm going to get really frustrated at a child, or where I just feel overwhelmed. And, I'm really in those times asking God, please, Lord, I need you. I need your help. I need your wisdom to do those things we've talked about, right? To prioritize, to be okay with the fact that my main floor of my house is basically kind of messy at all times, and that's okay. And Lord, I need you. Please help me to be patient and kind in my words, to model that for my kid right now. And so taking that moment to breathe and to pray can make all the difference in then following through with the things that you really truly desire and want to do in the ways that you want to reflect God to your kiddos. Last thing, and this will be really brief, what are you enjoying right now, right? What has quarantine given us that we wouldn't have had otherwise, that we can say, thank you. I can look back and really, really treasure this because of this.
I would say for us, just we had a lot of time together to begin with, but just even more time together, and just being really intentional about having fun together, because we're the only people that we have right now. So one of the things that attitude has birthed in our house is the kids have somehow organically come up with these competitions that Martin and I are having with each other. Currently, I am in training to race him around the driveway because the girls really want me to beat him. And there's an ongoing competition with really odd methods of score tallying as to which one of us is the funniest. So we're both trying to do stuff all the time that prove that we are the funniest. So that kind of lightens things up around here.
For me, it's as simple as being excited to watch a couple of movies with my kids and play games with them. We've just gotten so busy in recent years that I just don't ever sit down and watch a movie and play very few games with them. So that has been fabulous. And one other thing I really like is that they, I think, are appreciating each other more. Now that they can't be with their friends, they suddenly realize, oh yeah, my siblings are pretty fun. Like I love seeing how they're enjoying each other.
I feel like we're all very similar in how we're enjoying this time, but I feel like my kids are growing so fast, and it's just been really nice to have this slower pace of life, to just spend time with them, to play with them. I mentioned earlier, family kickball games, or going on hikes together, or exploring around our yard and doing, things like that. And my husband loves movies, and so we have been going on doing some movie marathons. So we've gotten through all the Hobbit movies. We've gotten through all the Lord of the Rings movies, and we have now moved on to all the Marvel movies. So we are halfway through every single Marvel movie, which is a little crazy, but we're enjoying that time.
So quarantine has given us a really beautiful gift of pushing the reset button on our schedule. I had been feeling weeks and months before this all happened, just a burden of the things that we were involved in, just feeling the weight of a schedule kind of crushing down. And I didn't really know what to do about it. And God apparently just stepped in and just wiped the slate clean, because everything has literally been taken away. And it's allowed me to take a step back from everything we're involved in and take an honest look at the things that we miss in our schedule, and what we don't really miss. And I think it's really neat because now I'm looking forward to the future when things start to slowly come back into the schedule. I'm going to be able to let go, I think, a little bit easier of the things that I didn't really miss. And I'm going to cherish more the things that I really did miss. So it's been really, it's been a complete blessing to me, because it really allowed me to get out of every obligation that I had made for me or my family, and evaluate how much we want to step back into it.
So one of the things that I think a lot of us are talking about is the stress of this time, and some of the grief that is going on as well, because we are missing out on things. And there are people who are very sick, or who are losing their jobs. And there's a lot going on right now. So just for transparency, to help a mom out there who's wrestling know she's not alone, would one or two of you be willing to share a little bit about just some of the wrestlings that you've been dealing with over the last few weeks, and what that's been like for you as you're walking through this time?
Yeah, for me, I have found like it's a struggle, because I feel like it's harder to do ministry, and I don't feel like I'm doing that great a job. I'd much rather just see somebody, hug them, talk to them, see how they're doing. And so I am not the greatest at keeping in touch over digital means. And so that's a matter of prayer for me, of, God, I need you to work through me and remind me who I need to be in touch with. But I do feel bad about that. And personally for our family, we have a senior in high school, and that's been a disappointment. Like this time is, while there've been fun things, I feel bad for these seniors, and they're missing out on some of these life milestones. And so I feel bad for them.
I think something that has been, just made me kind of sad more than anything. It's nothing big or monumental, but just the loss of some of the memories that I know we would be making that we're not making now. A small example is our family loves to go to Six Flags, and we have a lot of memories of that. My kids bring it up all the time. When are we going to get to do that again? And I want to make more of those memories. And there's just a sadness that comes with that when you realize that there are things you're missing out on, that you just wish you could still do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I would echo your comments about just missing out on opportunities, or not getting to see people. And as you guys were talking, I was thinking about, we've had some friends or even some family members actually that have gone through some really challenging circumstances just in the last 2 months. The kinds of situations where you would like to be there for them personally, to give them a hug, or to go visit, and to kind of practice the power of presence, right? And to be there for them. And that's not always possible right now. And that's been hard. And that's been something that, you have to come alongside of people from a distance, or you just over, FaceTime or Skype, and that can be really challenging. And I think it's important to recognize that is a loss, but that you're also doing the best you can in that time. and that you're seeking to support them and love them at the very best you can. That's challenging. Thank you guys for sharing though. We want to be real, and we want to recognize that while we want to look at the positives and we want to proactively seek for ways to manage the stress and create a rhythm in our days, we also want to recognize the hard stuff too. So thank you guys so much for sharing that. Well, thank you ladies so much for your insight, for your input, for your encouragement. I hope that you who are watching were able to take away a little nugget that will encourage your days and help you as we all walk alongside each other and walk through this quarantine time. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're thankful that you were here.